Today's guest is Laurie Cashman, co-founder and managing partner at Victress Capital, one of the leading early-stage venture funds focused on backing women-led and diverse founding teams, building solutions for overlooked consumers. Victress has been ahead of the curve on the demographic and cultural shifts shaping the next decade of consumer, from the massive generational wealth transfer into the hands of women and Gen Z, to the rise of founders reimagining categories like health, financial literacy, longevity, and upward mobility. In this episode, Laurie and I dive deep into how she balances data-driven diligence with founder intuition when backing early-stage brands, why founder market fit still matters more than ever, the major demographic trends Victress is watching in 2025 and beyond, and how she coaches founders through both scaling and crisis moments, and why her biggest piece of advice for consumer founders heading into 2026 is know your cash flow line by line. Welcome to In the Money, an exploration of whether you can still make money in D2C and CPG. We talk to some of the most interesting $5 million to $50 million founders, operators, investors, and acquirers in the space to ultimately answer the question, is D2C and CPG still a good business? Hope you'll enjoy the show. Being kind of C to Series A, you've got some data, you're kind of seeing the marketing efficiency, you're probably seeing how customers are responding and if they're coming back. How do you balance that data-driven diligence with still the intuitive product market fit, founder market fit that's so critical in consumer?
Yeah, the two go hand in hand for sure. But as you said, in the earlier stages, there's not a ton of data. That said, there's still plenty of diligence we can do. And we like to also do some primary research or customer reference checks. We try the product ourselves in those instances and really double click into what that user experience and journey looks like. But I'd say that the founder market fit aspect of it for us is paramount. And that is just such a layered process. We try our best to both learn and reflect from investments we've made and teams that we've backed, where we get it right and where we may miss things. But we really try to peel back and understand, there are founders who are so charismatic and they're great salespeople, or are so mission driven that you're in their corner just cheering for them because it's a very moving reason that, that leads them to build a particular solution. Or they're highly technical and just like deeply skilled. But at the end of the day, we try to understand, why does this founder have the unique advantage of winning in this space? Like, what is that reason? And is that reason sufficient enough to ensure that, they can crush the competition? But more often than not, the way we finish the assessment is we try to determine where those strengths are, but also where we believe the blind spots are. And simply by naming it, it's really helpful to us because I think we're more mindful of it going in. And rather than, I have my own sense of it and someone else on the team has theirs, we really try to align and name it together. And that way, as soon as we make the investment, we can, whether we're talking about recruiting new team members or coaching, it's pretty front of mind to understand what those strengths and weaknesses may look like, and try to either scaffold for them or really work hard in the relationship so that the trust is there, so we can give feedback where it's needed, and break through.
I had Greg Davidson from Lalo, the kind of toddler hardware high chair and bathtubs business. I actually didn't know the story that well, and it was great to kind of get to know the story. But one of my big takeaways was, how is it that when they started, these two guys in their early 20s who weren't parents, who didn't come from industrial design backgrounds, build a now mid-8-figure business? And we were just kind of talking about they got some feedback from early investors that, hey, they weren't from industry, they hadn't spent 15 years in industry, they weren't a customer. Talk a little bit about that founder profile. They were able to bring a fresh set of eyes, was kind of their story. Or do you really want that kind of, hey, they've been in that problem set for a while, or even better, they're from industry, so kind of know the problem set even more intuitively?
I don't know that I'm that dogmatic about any of the approaches. I think the one area where I maybe have a hard time getting excited is when a founder wants to be a founder and is trying on different problems, or there's some matchmaking, or they're recruited in to join a team and it's being incubated. Sometimes I just question like the level of passion and dedication. It's more of like a stumble upon something than a real crusade. Um, but I'd say like, I mean, I'd love to hear their story. Now I'm curious, but um, i- in my mind, there's no right or wrong. Like like domain expertise doesn't mean that you're a mom and you birth the baby and then now how to build those things. It can come in a lot of fashions and different forms, but um, I think like for example, we have founders in the portfolio who are scientists and they are so gifted in product development and innovation and just like some of the ways that they have huge unfair advantages is exciting. But then we recognize that there's other skill sets that they're missing, and we just think about the team and how to ensure that the right people are around the table, so that they can leverage the collective talents and be able to have the opportunity to scale and crush it.
Why do we love Numeral? Well, here's the good, the bad, the ugly. The good is that over 2,000 e-commerce store owners just like you use them for sales tax compliance, including brands like Graza, Ridge, Gruns, and 8 Sleep. The bad is that none of us got into this to spend a ton of time on sales tax and admin, which is why Numeral is able to help you in 5 minutes or less get full coverage, deal with registrations, ongoing filings, and compliance. It just all happens in the background. And the ugly is that not a lot of store owners know that sales tax is actually personally guaranteed. Said another way, that the states could end up coming after you personally if you're not on top of it. Even being a modest $5 million store owner, you could have nexus in 20 to 30 states. Again, Numeral helps you stay compliant, and they even guarantee their work. That's why we love them. Go and check them out at numeralhq.com. In addition to kind of that founder fit, I know previously and then again in pre-recording, we were talking about some of the thematic research that you're doing, especially around demographic changes. Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about, how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, I think the North Star since starting the firm has been to back founders building solutions for unmet needs and overlooked consumers. And that continues to be the case today. But since inception, we have always looked at demographic trends. We look at societal shifts, cultural shifts, and how advances in technology underpin those things. Today, we're really paying close attention to two major demographic shifts. The first is the generational wealth transfer, which has been underway for a while. But today it's going to the hands of women, as typically the male dies first, and so it'll transfer into the hands of women, and then ultimately into the hands of Gen Z. And then Gen Z specifically, the rise of Gen Z. And by that, I don't mean just like we're catering to all things Gen Z. For sure, Gen Z is the largest generation ever. There's a huge share of wallet there that we're paying attention to. They will drive most of the growth in GDP over the next 5 to 10 years. But when you think about on the back of Gen Z is Gen Alpha, and there's a massive decline in population, that's happening there. On the front end are, Gen X and baby boomers, and we will hopefully live longer lives, hopefully higher quality lives. But as more and more members of those generations retire and step out of the workforce, we don't have the infrastructure, the safety nets, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, right? Like it's a big societal experiment to see how we're going to handle all of this. And what I'm paying attention to is the downward pressure that puts on the working population. So where we are really focused the verticals are health and longevity, wealth and financial literacy, and then upward mobility, which really includes pathways to paychecks, financial security, and hopefully the opportunity to live a fulfilling and purposeful life, whether that's owning a home someday, having a pet, having a child. But because Gen Z is so large, it's imperative that we are building solutions today to ensure that every member of Gen Z can access a paycheck. It doesn't have to be through a 4-year college. It could be through vocational training. Many of them have indicated they want an entrepreneurial path. So that may require financial literacy at an earlier age. But any way that tools can be created to provide agency to ensure that they feel like they have the tools to um, advance themselves, whether that's just the agency to advocate for a promotion or to hire a new employee in a small business, whatever that looks like. But that's something we're paying very close attention to, because to fail at that, not to get into the cultural zeitgeist today, but if we were to extrapolate and have even more polarization and disillusionment at scale, I think that's highly problematic. So we work really closely. We built a Gen Z advisory council to facilitate intergenerational dialogue. We commission a lot of primary research in partnership with a platform called the Up and Up, so that we're listening deeply to certain areas of where we see these opportunities, coming about, and ensuring that our thesis is as sharp as it can be. And obviously, we're living in very dynamic times with the AI transforming the workplace. There's just so much for us to be absorbing real time, understanding, and embedding in, not just in the thesis work, but certainly our investment judgment. As I'm sure you see, like more and more companies coming online and trying to assess durability of their competitive moat. Is this an advantage that's long term, or just a slight advantage over a legacy player? Things like that.
Are there one or two brands within the Visible Ventures portfolio that you can talk about that are kind of on the right side of these demographic changes or some of these themes?
A recent investment is in a company called Happy Howl. They're creating a category called shelf-stable fresh pet food. So it means it doesn't need to arrive via cold chain supply logistics. Um, and one of the things that they're doing well, besides understanding that pet owners want what's best for their pets, um, they're really focused on retention. And um, why I like that so much is that, it's so tempting to focus on customer acquisition, especially in the earliest, innings of growth. And um, by focusing on retention, they're really uh, perfecting the playbook, understanding where the pain points are for their customers. And then I think as you scale that, you spare yourself hopefully of the churn, and the pain points that can happen when you're trying to acquire customers and not pay attention, to why or why not, they stick with you. So that's one brand that I think is doing things well. Um, Also, the CEO, the founder, has his desk right in the warehouse. So like the product is literally right there on the shelf. So I love it when founders are, um, you know, really living, eating, and breathing the business every day. So
Hopefully not
any
eating in this
no,
case.
hopefully not eating. I guess it's fresh, so it's probably human grade. But yeah, I don't think he's eating. Anyway, but that's one area where I think there's a lot of innovation, and really paying attention to where customer expectations are.
And maybe you were going to go into a second one.
I was going to talk about a company in our portfolio called Droplet. Actually, the scientists that I reference are the founders of Droplet, and they actually, earlier in their careers, one's a chemist and one is a mathematician. And together, they had developed a therapeutic drug using knot theory to target the right cell receptors, ultimately getting orphan drug status for a pediatric cardiomyopathy drug. And then through a series of experiences, they ended up trying to solve for a better delivery mechanism than a needle to deliver medicine. And they've developed this droplet device, which aerosolizes formulations, and it delivers those formulations 20 cell layers deep into your skin, targeting the right cell receptors. And they've developed incredible formulations around collagen, human stem cells, exosomes, that are very powerful. And in their case, I'd say, it's science-backed, evidence-based. I think consumers are warming up to devices. It's really a delivery platform that they've developed. But for them, they have such sticky customers. They have subscribers who have been with them since inception without interruption, like every month. And now, because the benefits are so tangible, like when someone tells you, it's great to have a good hair day, but when someone tells you your skin is glowing, like, wow, your skin looks great, there's something really, that really elevates you. You're like, wow, I'm having a great day. And so more and more customers are experiencing those benefits, and celebrities and influencers we're really at an inflection point where they are coming to us saying, I tried this and I love it and I want to be on your team. And so I think that taps into, today, I know we've talked before about meta and paid acquisition, and how you can quickly get upside down in some of those cases. But when you really focus on the end customer, and you build a community where you're sharing what you're doing, at some point, the flywheel can really get going, and it's super fun when you start to see the ROI on all of that, the grassroots efforts, finally paying off.
AI, AI, AI. Everyone's talking about it, and you're worried you're getting left behind. Meet RichPanel, an AI-first customer support platform that's built for one thing: making support faster, smarter, and cheaper for e-commerce brands. Something you can actually feel smarter about using. RichPanel combines a unified inbox across email, chat, and socials, a customizable self-service portal that customers actually use, and Sidekick AI, powered by GPT-4, which learns from your past tickets to suggest on-brand replies. Does it actually work? Well, with RichPanel's guarantee, you get guaranteed 30% cost savings when you switch from Zendesk or Gorgeous, 30% automation to reduce your ticket volume, and a no-risk guarantee that if RichPanel doesn't deliver those results in 60 days, you get a full refund. That's why top brands like Ridge Wallet, Jones Road Beauty, and Pella Cases are already using RichPanel to save hundreds of thousands in support costs. Time to start letting AI work for you. Head to richpanel.com and start your free trial today. Real savings, real automation, real AI that actually works. And when you get something with so much IP, that takes time to develop. How do you think about kind of getting involved pre-commercialization, especially again when there is so much R&D, versus no, we still want to wait to see it in market and some of that data flow in?
Yeah, it's such a great question because, I'm not going to lie, like devices in particular, I think can be very challenging. And so in many cases, I'd say what tips the scales is we say no, no, no. And then we're still having, like, we still find ourselves in the conversation. So there's something that's pulling us, into it. And even though we'll say, we really don't invest in devices, or we're really not, looking for something like this right now. But as we learn more and we learn more, if we see a there, if there are like any proof points that suggest that this is, that this has the real possibility of scaling into something, huge, then we're willing to make the investment. And I guess that's what we get paid to do, right? It's like, it's a risk assessment. Um, but there are those moments where it's like, this is the time to get in, especially we're a smaller fund. So in many cases, the entry point is early. But we realize that, that's the right valuation for us, and it's the right time to take the risk. And then I think one of the things we do really well is roll up our sleeves and really add as much value as we can, just to ensure that, we're de-risking as much as we possibly, can contribute toward the effort.
And then on the early example, and we can abstract Happy Holloway, but there is that really strong retention or LTV. And maybe just my question is around capital markets today. Like, do you say, hey, like, given that the retention is really strong, we've got the data to support that, let's spend farther out on the payback curve because, growth is, let's go and win the market? Or is it, hey, capital markets, really conservative, we still want to be kind of pretty close on that payback window, and it's okay if it takes, 12 to 18 months longer to get there?
It's really a case by case basis, and as it's often, there are a lot of voices around the table, right? So we will weigh in, and we're not always the voice that carries the day. I tend to believe that if you're building consensus, that you go for it. For example, that's a little bit like the instinct, but enough pattern recognition to know, like, timing matters, right? So if there is a window and you believe, you can really like capture the market or get a real advantage, again, like there are lots of other considerations, right? Especially cash burn and capital and how quickly you think, things will unfold. But assuming you can check some of those boxes, I think that that timing matters so much. And if you can get consensus that it's the right thing to do, let's like add gasoline to the fire and let's go for it. Um, Typically, I'd say I'm all in favor of that. And I do love exits. So don't get me wrong. I love unit economics. I love capital efficiency. I believe that you need to be somewhat commercial and understanding, what the landscape looks like and not banking on the fact that the window is always going to be open because you're such a special company. But there are times where it's like, it's time to go for it. And we just got to do it.
Things don't always go up and to the right. How do you coach founders through moments when things are going sideways, they need to make a channel evolution, or fundraising takes a little bit longer? Yeah, how are you getting them through that hump?
I think first and foremost, it might be the mom in me, but I feel like I'm always available. Like you'll never get an out of the office on my email, and I can't think of a holiday where there hasn't been some version of a crisis, that needed to be addressed. I'm always there. I'm not the one that's looking for the exit, and not the one that's um too busy with my family to give founders the time that they deserve. So I think that's important, because just knowing that sometimes they just need to talk things through, they need to like process something. Um, and I'm always up for that. But I believe that I am pretty pragmatic, and I try to come at things with a solutions orientation. I also have like a finance background, so I tend to really orient around cash flow, and try to create like the menu of options. Here are some things we can do, and then whether we want to force rank or think through triage, I guess, like what makes the most sense right now, what could we do, what's a contingency, that the lever we don't want to pull right now but we know we could if things got worse. And I think that often, and maybe it's rallying investors, around a backstop or a bridge or something as well. But the more that I can do those things, that's something like in my skill set, I know I can do really well and show up in a way that hopefully is reassuring on some level. Because at the end of the day, as when you run out of cash, that's when you're really your back's up against the wall. But just about everything else, you can figure out.
If you think selling to your domestic market is good, wait till you see what happens when you truly go global. That's where Passport comes in. Passport is a full-stack global commerce partner built for ambitious brands that want real international scale without the headaches. They can help you launch and ship in-country in key markets such as Canada, UK, EU, and Australia. Or they can help you ship cross-border. With Passport, you get smooth international shipping to over 180 markets, fast, DDP ready, with branded tracking, high-touch customer support, and top-tier delivery success. Your compliance, taxes, duties, and customs handled end-to-end. No surprises at checkout or customs, just clean cross-border expansion. They'll even handle your duty drawback claims. And you get localization and storefront adaptation, local currencies, shipping rates, payment methods, and tailored checkout experiences so your brand feels local no matter where you ship. Passport works with most US and UK-based 3PLs and with top brands like Ridge, Hexclad, OneSkin, Dole's Kill, and many more that have already turned Passport into their growth engine for global sales. So if you're thinking global, if you want to scale into new markets, unlock demand outside your home country, and do it the right way, go check out passportglobal.com. And maybe on the upswing, is there a tactic, a channel, a piece of tech that's working especially well for your consumer products portfolio right now?
I think this is probably commonly known, but I do think that influencer, affiliate, building community on social, a lot of our founders are the face of their brands and their companies, and they're taking the community behind the scenes. They're sharing their journey. And I think that really resonates. And I know that in some cases our founders have tried to outsource it, because it's a lot of work. It's something else to add to their plates. But at the end of the day, they're the best ones positioned to tell the story and to share. And when they're willing to do that, it pays off. I think when you talk about unit economics and everything else, it's a huge advantage if that's how they can, acquire or retain or, customers. I think it's very powerful, and it never ceases to amaze me. Just I think like the reach that it can have.
And when a founder or a brand is saying, hey, we're going to spend all this energy in doing some of maybe the less measurable top of the funnel, whether that's influencer or whether that's in real life activations, thus, hey, like we're going to try to do paid marketing. We're going to spend that same energy and dollars on paid marketing where we can report back like, hey, this is something that we can scale to the next frontier. Yeah. Do you like to see a balance? Or do you get concerned where you're like, hey, like how many activations can you really do a quarter?
Yeah, I think that the like IRL activations, you can definitely burn out, quickly. Like that's a lot of time, a lot of energy, some costs, etc. So, but typically, I feel like founders have a pretty good governor on how much is too much. I think on the paid acquisition side, in our experience, most of our founders today, they maybe have learned the hard way in the past, but most of our founders really keep a tight leash on paid. Like they're watching it closely. They're making sure CAC's not getting out of control. Um, and they're testing and they're trying to figure out what's working and what's not. And we love like having those conversations around the insights around um when they can derive like, okay, like when this happens, cat comes down. When we try these other things, it gets a little out of whack, or maybe it's seasonal or something else. But I think that when founders are really in it and looking for the signals and not just delegating that to you know someone whose job title says marketing, um, we have a high level of comfort that they're doing the right things.
Are there any hard lessons that founders have learned this year, or maybe a different way of answering or asking this is, yeah, is there a piece of advice that you would give to kind of broader founders for 2026?
I can't believe it's going to be 2026. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, my advice is for founders to really crawl through the P&L and L and the cash flow. I think, some great founders, Zappos, Amazon, like those founders, they watched every penny. And I think I just had a conversation the other day with a founder who said she couldn't believe how much money they were spending on freelance consultants. So it wasn't showing up in payroll, it was somewhere else in the P&L. And, when you double click and look at what rolls up to that line item, um, I'm not pointing fingers. Founders have so much on their plate. There's so many other things going on. But I think that especially for founders who don't gravitate toward finances, to push themselves to really understand where every like lever is, and on the cash flow side too, with working capital and terms and how things um impact cash flow. I think the more that they really like get their like roll up their sleeves and understand it, it's so empowering. Like to really understand, and then to from there, I think they can understand. Okay, when we hit these volumes, we're going to have these opportunities on margin. Intuitively they may know these things, but I think there's just a way that the P&L, especially on the cost structure, fixed and variable, like those costs creep up. So I would say it can be a real advantage if you really understand where those drivers are, because it'll help you figure out when to pull back and when to push forward. Um, and it's when for companies that underinvest in that function and they end up in react mode a lot because they're not, like the dashboards aren't quite where they need to be. And so the reporting happens and then they're surprised by something. I think that to try to get that, back into balance, is a real unlock for founders and one that we don't talk about maybe enough.
And do you often encourage, like, quickly after your investment, like if they don't have it already, to have a strong fractional CFO that can build the reporting standards, that is doing timely kind of month ends?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like I talk about it all the time.
As we head towards a wrap, Laurie, is there anything you're seeking from listeners, types of brands that you want to be seeing, operators, collaborators?
I think, I'm always up for obviously learning about new ventures, for meeting founders, for having conversations with other investors and operators. So I'm always in learn mode myself. I'm trying to always raise the bar and learn from mistakes and do things better. So absolutely reach out on LinkedIn, or directly to me, LaurieVisibleVentures.com. And yeah, I'm up for it.
Laurie, thanks so much for coming on and look forward to next time.
Thanks, likewise.